Hi everyone, I'm Jake and this is
Owen. We're here today for another HTML5 Immersion Day to talk about advanced Google Web Designer techniques. We're so glad you guys could join us. And what do we do? We're here at Google on the ads team simplifying the creation of beautiful ads. And what is Google Web Designer? Google Web Designer is a tool we've been building. It's still in beta. It's about 2 years, 3 years? It's about 2 or 3 years old, and what it does is it gives you the ability to create HTML5 content both in a visual way and in a programming way. You have the best of both worlds and the ability to go back and forth between the two. And it's a rich integrated development environment that has built-in components, a built-in way to deal with events and animation, and we think it's really just a very powerful way to speed up the development so you can rapidly create whatever it is you're trying to create, whether it be ads, websites, even presentations, anything you want to make that can go on a web browser or mobile device. It's possible.
And for me personally, Google Web Designer is the preferred tool for creating ads on the DoubleClick stack. For me, just the learning curve of what are components and having a graphic user interface that deals with the enabler really made making ads a lot simpler. So we're going to go through a demo and kind of just talk to you through some of our tactics. Watching us build an ad will be good for you guys because you'll see some of the tools that we're using, and maybe training, you see the tools, but you're not quite sure what context you should be using them in. And speaking of some of the GWD training, we actually have a lot of very good resources online at google.com/webdesigner. If you scroll down there, there should be the Help Center, there should be a forum, as well as more training videos to dive deeper into it. At Google here, the way that I learned GWD was actually just going through all the Help Center stuff.
Yeah, that's great. So we have jam-packed agenda. We just kind of gave an introduction to the tool. We're going to, as Jake said, show an ad, and then we're going to then build the ad and show, go under the hood and show how to write some JavaScript to tell some of your display objects what to do. And then at the end, we have a survey that if you complete the survey, you can get a PDF of kind of just a consolidated list of resources that can get you started in any areas that we didn't have time to cover in depth. So, okay, without further ado, let's just show you this. Well, it's not really the best looking ad of all time, but
work in progress.
it's more about showing how to do things than this is not a art design type of thing. So anyway, so here we are in Studio. And if I want to refresh the page here, we can see this ad in action. So this is our fake brand Voro is this wonderful car, and what we have here is some intro animation. We have a swipe gallery that shows a few different kinds of cars, and we have 3 pages on this top nav here. If I click on this second page, you see a YouTube player with 2 buttons. When I click on another button, it loads a different video. That's done with an event handler. There's our teammate Paul Fennett talking about how to do Google Web Designer. And then here we have a little text box, maybe with some important safety information or something. Okay, so this ad is a dynamic ad, so it pulls in information from a dynamic profile. And if we go over to Google Web Designer, you can see that we have 3 pages here. We have some animation on the timeline. We're on the first page here. So it kind of just animates in, and the opacity changes. And yeah, so all this is, the dynamic code is mapped with in code view all the way at the bottom.
And so let's actually get started on building this ad. I know we only have an hour here. We're going to cover a lot of material very quickly.
Okay, so just to get the new file created here, it's just going to be a 300 by 250. This is going to be, we're going to call this the final Voro in page, and we're just going to create that right there. And here we have a blank slate, no pages, no assets are in there, and Jake's just going to build the primary navigation.
All right, so let's get going as quick as possible. For me personally, since this is advanced GWD, I like using that advanced timeline, but first things first, let's get some assets in here to work with. And then I'm going to start covering groups and when to use groups, like when it would be the appropriate time for it, and some advantages of using groups. So first of all, I'm just pulling in some colors of the car there, and then we're also going to pull in a logo. So let's drop these onto the screen. And now I'm going to highlight transform controls. I'm holding down Shift so we can shift and hold that there. Let me try that again. Don't think I quite got it. There we go. Holding down Shift first so it scales in the right order. Shift that down again. Just a little slow there. And then we're going to add, let's start out with that blue car there. Again, we have our transform controls selected. Going to go over here, and we're going to actually change some of our properties. That's going to be under, let's see, sometimes I forget these myself, but let's go ahead and change that opacity to 0.3. How's that look to you?
It looks pretty good. It's nice and it's ghosted out there. It's not distracting from the main content. And it's kind of just a nice artistic element.
Okay, good practice. We'll just call this BG car here, so I know when I'm calling different things. We're going to set a keyframe.
So that's one way to set the ID is on the layers panel in the animation timeline. You can also set that same property on the properties panel, and that's how you can assign CSS tools or grab it out of the DOM and code view.
And so I threw in some keyframes here, and what we're actually going to do is we're going to start with the car a little bit further back, and I'm holding down Control. I believe it's Control or Command in the Mac. I keep forgetting those, just to make sure that it snaps over there. And then we'll do the same. Come over here. With a little luck, that'll just be a subtle animation. I'm going to change our easing. Whenever you have a car, it kind of comes to a stop there when you hit the brakes. So we'll just snap that into play. And we have this here. So we have a car, it comes in. Oh, and is that pretty boring to you? That looks pretty boring to me. That's good, though, because it's going to be in our background element. All right, so we haven't started on groups yet, but I'm going to show you the reason why I want to use groups here. So we're just going to duplicate the page. That wasn't the duplicate button, so we'll click this one. That was the new page button. This is the duplicate page button, and we're actually going to do that twice. So let's go to just so you guys following along at home here know what I'm doing. I'm just going to label these pages, and we'll just throw a 1 in there, and we'll take these out before the final add. But this is just since these pages are pretty similar, so you guys can follow along. All right, so we have our 3 pages there. And then what happened on those pages, we still have the same car on every single page. It still comes in. But let's just change what asset that car is. So it already has the animation properties on it and everything, but what we actually want to do is just change these colors of it. So let's go into the properties here, and we can see in our source assets that it's calling the color blue car, and this is on page 2. We'll change that to bronze. And it's swapped over to bronze there. We're going to the 3rd page. Same thing, we'll select the car. And let's just change this one to white. So you notice when it made a copy of all the different assets here. So the car changes colors. We didn't need a group for this situation. However, when we start doing the nav here, let's go ahead and build one of those real quick. So we're going to take our text tool, and we're just going to write. nav1 there. Let's go ahead and center that. Let's change the font to how about Arial looks nice. 16 points is fine. We're going to change this over here to white. Let's do FF. It picks it up. Excellent. And then we're going to go over here. Properties, we'll call this nav1. This is another way you can set the ID. And our background color for that, we'll make that a nice crisp blue there. See, we'll add a couple padding on it. We have our chain link selected there, so if we just scroll that over to 5, we got a little bit of 5 there. The nav looks a little bit tall, so we're going to reduce the height. Awesome. And we can even reduce the width of it too a little bit. So let's crunch that in there. So now I'm just selecting it. I'll do my shortcut keys for copy and paste. And we'll go over here, grab our selection tool. Again, didn't quite got there it is. There's a nav1, and then one more time, we'll copy and paste that. Is that we'll go ahead and rename these here since these are unique instances. It's not hurting us. 3. Oops. Grab this guy here. Change that to 2. Okay, so we have our nav here. Oops. And let's go ahead and make sure these guys are aligned to each other on the top.
Fix the IDs.
Yep. And we'll go to that in just a sec. So, got these guys here. We'll select this guy. That's called our nav1. When I was copying and pasting, I rearranged the order. So that's telling me just you can't have two things named the exact same there. So let's go back and call this nav3. This one selected is nav2. And then this one selected is nav1. So we have these guys here. Excellent. We can even distribute these evenly on the container if we wanted to. So if I grab all 3 of these, then select that, and then our even distribution there, distribute it to the container, and align to top, everything's nice and crisp there. So let's hook up some events now. Since this is our nav, we're going to go through and we'll say, all right, I have the first one selected. This is where our naming comes into play. I forgot to name that first one there. Just keep it as nav1, just makes things clean. So we're adding a new event. What happens when we click on something? It's going to be a mouse touch. We're going to click, we're going to go to a page. It's in page deck, and that's our page 1. Excellent. Div nav2, we're going to grab that. Mouse touch, we're going to click. Since it's Google ad, go to page. Go into our page 2 there. And then finally, just one more here. Nav3, click on that, go to add, go to page. Excellent. So let's go ahead and preview this now. Now that we have this set up on one page, and we can see, all right, the animation comes in, we have our navigation, but it's not really doing too much. You know, when we go to the page 2 and page 3, we don't have the nav there. We can copy and paste it, but another thing that we can do, and this was added pretty recently, is we can turn this into a group. And a group works pretty similar to how movie clips would if you were using Flash. So call that nav group, because they have a target inside the group, outside the group. Excellent. So let's see here. I rename that. And then go ahead and set that up. Page 1. Save. Okay, and we can look at our assets to make sure that that was turned into a group there. See if we have our nav group. Here we go. So we have this. We'll try this again. Create group. And then we'll go to our second page here. And drop our nav group on there. And since it's a group there, we can just align that to the left and right of our stage there. Oops, don't have container highlighted. That's why that's not working out. And we'll do the same thing to the third page. Align that to the top. So, checking our preview again, we have coming over here. Let me see what's going on. That's probably because my components don't say nav group 1. Just one moment. And we can go in here and edit this to be nav group 1. So that's calling that. So let's actually drill down into the groups here and see what's going on. So that's nav group 1. And within nav group 1, that's 1. Mouse click. Goes to page 1. Again, just set this up here. Nav group 2, nav 2. Oops. And then nav group 3, that should still be working correctly. Oh, that's a difference. There we are. And this should debug it here. And let's go ahead and preview that again. Goes over to 3. Looks like our 2 and our 1 is a little bit mixed up there. So 1 goes to 2. Yeah. Let's go ahead and drill down into that group again.
Oh, one is.
And it looks like it's because we have 2 different things on that here. So we'll grab that one, we'll delete it, we'll double check this one, and that should be going to page 1. You're correct. Thank you, Owen. Let's see here, 2, 3, excellent. Demo gods are not quite with me today, but as you can see here, we got our nav starting to go. We got our cars fading in. So what would be the advantage of using groups? Well, when you actually drill down into a group here, as you can see that I'm doing, if I wanted to just adjust one piece of text, since it's all being referenced from the same group in there, so we can grab that, we can grab our text there, and within that, like, we can call this like safety info. And when we do that, when we go to preview, you'll notice that that updates on every single page. So no matter what page we're on, the same group there, it doesn't add more code because it's all referencing the same components. Oh, and do you want to walk us through some of the dynamic stuff?
Yeah, sure. So just taking a step back, when we talk about what groups are and how those are implemented in GWD, so Google Web Designer makes extensive use of custom elements, some of the newer features of HTML and HTML5, and one of those is the template tag. So if we look at the, when you assemble your elements in Design View and then select multiple elements, create a group, it then takes that markup that was on the page and it moves it into a template tag, which is not registered in the DOM. It's only registered when you create an instance of it. So if we look at the code view and see how Jake has done that, as soon as he created the group, well, okay. So we're presenting.
Yeah.
Switch back to code view, and then.
Can we go back to our laptop? There we go.
Okay, so if we look at what the markup is here, so we have an HTML page at the top of the page. We have an HTML tag. It opens. And we have a head tag here with some metadata. We have some styles at the top. Whenever you position things in Google Web Designer, it writes out a style, assigns it a class automatically, and it starts giving all the elements that you put on the page its own class. And similarly, the animations that you do on the timeline are created as CSS3 transition. That's just important to note, where if you see something that's not absolutely perfect, like when you do it with your mouse, then you can go into the code view and just simplify or make small tweaks, edits. And then after this script tag, style tag with all the scripts, or with all the styles, we have some additional styles for components that have been added. And then there's the definitions of all of the custom elements that are being used in this web page. So what does that mean? What do I mean by custom elements? Well, Google Web Designer makes extensive use of custom elements. What are custom elements? Well, they're web components. You have the ability to, in HTML5, to just create your own new elements that are used. Like the browser has a number of elements built in, like head tags and anchor tags, A tags, divs. HTML5 has introduced new tags like the video tag and the audio tag and the canvas tag. And like you could talk to the browser and define your own by calling out some JavaScript. You can define your own and extend the language of HTML5. And what is this? Why is this important? Well, it gives you the ability to extend the language and build your own tools and building blocks for making your own rich content. So that's pretty cool. Like if I'm at an agency and I'm making these same things day in, day out, well, I could just build my own component that could handle some of this repeatable type of programming, and then just drag it right in, and it's a black box. You know how it's going to work. You can just plop it on the page, put the definition on the page, and then create a new tag. And that's what Google Web Designer has here. So if we look at the markup here, after we have the opening body tag, and then when you make a new double-click creative, it's got this element here. This is an HTML element called GWD-DoubleClick. And so what is special about that? So there's a number of properties and methods that you can call on this that is built-in functionality, but then as far as I'm concerned on this web page, I just put this tag on there, and boom, all of a sudden I have advanced, rich functionality available to me, and I didn't have to lift a finger, write a single piece of code except for just making a new ad. And so getting back to what groups are, it's another concept related to web components, is this template tag here. So when Jake created a group earlier, it took a bunch of markup, and then as soon as you created the group, it took this markup and copied it into this template tag, and some extra JavaScript got included onto the page to be able to map this markup here in this group, nav group. The second time you made it, the nav group, and so this maps back to when I use it in my markup right here. We see the way this is used. It's got this group, and so the JavaScript tells the web page, the browser, to take this markup that's inside this template tag and inject it right here. So that's like what's going on behind the scenes, and you can just knowing that and wrapping your head around what is a template tag, why is that important? Well, it gives you the ability to have reusable code that's not going to affect page performance until you need to, and then if you there's no difference between creating 50 instances or just one. It's all got one, one original kind of source template. Okay, so in addition, so what happens when we drag these components out? Same thing. If I'm here on page, I want to go back to page 1. So if I'm on page 1 and I want to add a gallery, so these are all custom components that are similar to the ones that are built onto the page. If I drag one of these out, then what happened? It just created an instance of this component definition in CodeView. It grabbed some new styles, it grabbed some new JavaScript that defines the component, and yeah, so the swipe gallery, here's the swipe gallery style, and it's a CSS file that's going to come on to to give us some new presentation stuff, and then this is the component definition. So once the browser knows how to define it, then you have the ability to add to use this new tag. Here's the component. It's just gwd-swipe gallery. Like when if we didn't include that definition, we wouldn't be able to use this tag. The browser wouldn't know what it is. So that's cool. And so now we have a swipe gallery on here. I'm going to give this thing a property, shorten this name because I'm going to use it in code. I'm going to call it SG for swipe gallery. And, come down here and call it SG, give it an instance name. An important thing to call out about all these gallery components is that you can populate them with either images or groups. So we saw Jake create a group for our navigation, but I could similarly create a whole product page with a headline and a product image and a price, and then be able to just fill out whatever the group name is here, and then that name will just correspond to whatever group is down here. But we're not going to do that. We're going to use, for simplicity's sake, we're going to just populate the swipe gallery with images that I have set up in my dynamic feed. So we're going to build a dynamic feed like we showed at the beginning. We have a simple profile here, and this is a combination of basic and advanced dynamic for rich media. And there's 3 tabs here. I have a product tab, which has those 4 cars, or 4 car images, which correspond in asset library to an asset library ID, which is cool. So we have a feed with 4 products in it, and we want to just show those 4 products in our ad programmatically. So that's the product section, and let me just close this sheet. Then we have 3 basic profile fields, a headline, and the 2 videos. So if we go to step 4 of the profile, let's say we want to save this. So here on step 4 is where we generate the code. And whenever I'm going to be building a Google Web Designer dynamic ad, I always pull up this Help Center article. I just go to the support.google.com/richmedia, and I search for dynamic Google Web Designer, and it always comes up at the top. So this just kind of walks you through what I'm doing. I'm going to do it really fast. And let's see. So here's all of our code. It's got the 4 products, and then those basic fields that I have here. So I just go in here, select all, come back to the ad, go to CodeView. You can put this inside the init dynamic method that we're about to create, but I always put it right before the closing body script. And this is just the default content, so you can test locally. And once that's there, We go in here and we want to add an event on page load to map that dynamic data to elements in our ad. So I go here, we just click the plus sign to create a new event. The target's going to be the body, document.body, and then we're going to have the add initialized Google Ad event, and we're going to call a custom function here, and call this method init dynamic, and then I always just put console. I put the name. I log out the name of the method so that I can find it easily. I don't like editing the code right here. That's just my preference. But you could write all the code right there. So now
and that's just good best practice. You know, anytime that you fire a function to run a console log, because that's super helpful when it comes down to debugging.
So then when I go into code view here, we can find this method that I just created somewhere above. Here we go. Here's my console.log. So I have that swipe gallery on there. I gave it a name of SG, and I want to use some of these other things. I guess I did this on this page. Okay. So I'm going to position this. We can delete. Oops. So it's right here, and let's just double check. It's called SG. So I want to put the image URL from those for those 4 products. I want to put that in there. So how am I going to do that? Well, I just created a function called init dynamic, and in that code I want to create with code what I want to set. So this is our swipe gallery component. This has a bunch of properties and methods available to me. One of the properties is called images. One of the properties is called groups. So I'm going to create a string, which is just a line of text that is an array of the 4 product URLs. That's what this field expects. It expects an array of strings. And so I can do that by looping through. As you can see in this invocation code, these things are all in an array, and we have a property on this array of objects that has exit URL, that has product URLs for the image. So that's what I want to do, is just loop that array in the invocation code to, I have some code already that kind of helps with that right here. So okay, so the first thing is we grab the swipe gallery out of the DOM, and that's why I like this Help Center doc, is because I can never remember this. This is like Google Web Designer's way to grab elements out of the DOM. You could just do document.get element by ID, but this normalizes your native HTML with all of your components with GWD. Kind of just makes them all the same. You can treat everything the same by just using this. And so with that here, we gave that element an instance name of SG. So now we have swipe gallery, a reference to the swipe gallery, and I'm going to also, we have to create this string with what we want to, we're just going to set this empty to an empty string right here. Yeah, so we got start with an empty string. Then we want to loop over. I'm just going to copy this. I want you to watch me write this code. Actually, I'm just going to talk about it. So we're going to loop over the products that we want to put in the gallery. So this is a simple for loop. We start I at 0. I is a variable that's going to count for us. And while I is less than the length of the array of products, that's how long this. That's how many times it's going to fire. And then it's just going to increment each time we pass through by 1. So then we got our this line appends the new product URL to the string. It's plus equals. It takes whatever's in images and it puts this at the end of it, and then it checks to see if we're at the last one, and if it's not the last one, so if it's the current index of what we're iterating is less than the end, than the last one, then we're going to put a comma. So this is just going to, at the end of this for loop, the images is going to be all of the product image URLs, and they're going to be delimited by a comma. So then here, if we console, just to check, test early and often, if I just want to console out images, just to see how we did, here is our, so we have that initial console.log that fires on page load, and then here is here's our string. Oh, it's actually going to exit to that link. But here's our string of all of the default content, which is cool, so that means it's working. So then lastly, now that we've created this string, we want to set that. So sg.set attribute, we're just going to change whatever the value of attributes is. And which value is it? I think it's called images. It's a capital I. That's what we got this help center doc for, to help us. And so for
image there.
Yeah, well, that's also in here. Yeah, it's called images with a lowercase I. So then we can just, that's close. Images, and then we're going to set our variable that we called images to that attribute. So now, when I preview this, we should see, yeah, set attributes. It's supposed to be set attribute. So notice how I'm not writing too much code before I test. You know, that's a problem that sometimes happens. If you do like 5 things in code view and then go to preview, you'll be like, oh, well, I could be wrong in any one of those 5 things, but here I'm just doing one thing at a time and checking. So here's our swipe gallery of 4 cars, which is all the same color car, and that's because this is our default content. The default, it's not actually dynamic yet. It becomes dynamic when we publish it up to DoubleClick Studio. So here we are. We're going to do dynamic hands-on NAM, and our campaign name is going to be our advanced GWD, and creative is going to be called Final Voro in Page. And when I hit enter, it's going to author, make a new API call to DoubleClick Studio to create this a new creative, but the files aren't there yet. It's just sitting there, and then it says it's successfully created, and the publish button becomes active. I click publish, and it takes wherever I am in this ad on my local machine, wraps up all those files, and pushes up it's a zip of 2 folders, the published and the authoring, and that's really powerful when you're working on a team, because at that point, all you need to do to share this ad to someone is give them the studio link, and then they can have all the native files. Like sometimes when we were in the old days with Flash, you had to go hunting for the source files, and it just became, you'd lose time trying to do that runaround. This is one click to publishing, and then you have in the cloud everything that you need to see the ad. So now if I go back to the to Studio and I go to the campaign level, we'll see this new Final Voro in Page. This is the thing that I just made. And if I preview this, I might have all the cars. Yeah, see, now we have different color cars. So this is the profile that's giving this creative the feed that we, you know, in its finished dynamic state.
Very nice.
So yeah, this mouse cursor pointer is something that's kind of bothering me. So
okay, so let's just go into the code view.
I'm going to add a new style here at the top called class pointer, and just give this a style here, cursor pointer And now I have a new class definition, a style here. And then I want to go down here to the groups. Where are the groups defined? There's a template tab. Here's the template. Nav group 1. In nav group 1, I'm just going to add this pointer class. Copy this. How much time? How are we doing on time? 15 minutes. That's not too good. So now when we preview this locally, we're going to see a cursor pointer. So I just added a class, and it was easily applied. So this is giving the idea of like, oh, I know how to write HTML. Google Web Designer doesn't really prevent me from doing the stuff that I know how to do, and like to do, and it kind of gives you the advanced functionality in addition to extend your skills. So back to design view, we're going to just show how to create a new YouTube video. I'll just delete this. I'm going to add a YouTube player here and put it up in the corner. And give this a instance name of my YouTube player. Just copy this and give the name for reporting.
And what Owen's showing here is that even though the components can be drag and dropped and customized in the design view, you can also use the code view to extend those even further. So he's going to get into sending some of the video IDs here.
Var YouTube player equals in the same way that I grabbed an instance of the swipe gallery component out of the DOM. I'm going to do that here too.
And while he's setting that up, I see a question about clipping and masking. There's a really good Help Center article that goes over HTML5 masking and clipping that we wrote. It wasn't GWD specific. That's in the works for GWD, is to incorporate some of those concepts into the product. At the moment, we don't have an ETA for that, though. As soon as we do, I'm sure that Jazz will post that onto the GWD forums.
Okay, so if you're wondering what properties and methods are on these GWD components, you can learn about those, whichever one you're trying to use, whichever one you're curious about learning about. Over here, there's an API is all listed in the Google Web Designer Help Center. So if I'm trying to figure out how to use this YouTube component, well, I can go here and it can talk to me about all of the properties. What are they called? And similarly, this dynamic build thing has on here the YouTube video. So I'm trying to set the YouTube ID so that it knows what video to play. So it's called video-URL. Video-URL. And then what am I setting that to? This is one of the basic dynamic profile fields. So now, when I preview this on my second page, we have a YouTube video here, and I just gave it its own video. I didn't set that in the properties panel. I set that with JavaScript. I could, instead of setting it like this is a dynamic value, I could have hard-coded it under the, so this is page 1, page 2, and I select the YouTube video. Down here at the bottom, we have all these configurable controls, which I can set visually in design view. Notice there's no URL. I could easily have just copied the ID in there, the YouTube ID. But instead, I can now manage whatever I want to manage visually. I can also do it with code. And
one of the advantages of doing it that way is that you have the ability to manipulate that a lot easier in your code. I think on your first demo you had a switch there to show that you were swapping out the YouTube video ID but not adding a different player.
Correct. We're using the same video component. We're not, so I'll just, on here, I just dragged out a tap area. I'm going to go inside this thing and oops. Call this video 2. Mhm. And I'm inside this tap area component right now, which is crazy. And a dream within a dream. So we're inside this tap area. I'll deselect. And then I just kind of want to set, I'll get out of this. Click on the breadcrumb there. Position, size, style. Give this thing a light background color. And then we'll add an event to this tap area, touch click. And what do I want to do? I want to set the YouTube ID. I'm just showing you how to bind it to an event here. So if I go back to this profile, and just grab this second YouTube ID out of there, just put it in there. So that just made a new event handler. So now if I preview this, I go to that page, and I click on this, then we see a new video. So what that did was add like handlers in code view to be able to switch the video. So now when I see here, I see nav 2 click, group 1 click, init dynamic. Here's the tap area, and here's where it calls that set YouTube ID, and it gives that. So I can easily just swap this out to instead of hard coding, call video 2. So in that way, you let Google Web Designer handle some of the scaffolding of event handlers, and then you can just kind of tweak it to the degree that makes sense for you, and that's pretty cool. So now if I just want to publish this back up, we just made a round of revisions, and I can just one-click publish back to Studio, and then that's my creative agency workflow that kind of saves time across the team. Okay, so we got about 8 minutes. If I would just go and preview this last preview it again here. So here we are in Studio. This is the swipe gallery that's public. That was set. We set this component with dynamic values. We've got pages on here with groups in it. We can switch videos using code, and we have cool. So that's great. So what did we learn today? We learned about
groups and when to use groups versus just when to copy and paste, so you can swap out assets easier. In the case of our backgrounds there, we created a different background on each page, but for the groups, we kept things consistent and showed how editing just one element within the group can apply that to all the instances of it. We talked a little bit about the components and how that fits into groups and how that fits into web components as well.
Yeah, and web components, in addition to all of the custom components built into Google Web Designer, now we have the ability to build our own components. We didn't have time to cover that today. Maybe we'll do that in an upcoming Hangout on Air, but there is documentation on how to do that that walks through how to set up a manifest JSON file that tell Google Web Designer which properties to expose. And that's just, kind of like the next level of, first you learn how to learn the tool, learn some basic fundamentals. There's a fundamentals training certification exam that you can kind of test to build up your skills, and that's linked in the slide that you can get if you fill out the survey. Please fill out the survey. We're sorry that we didn't have time to get to all these questions. Let's try to knock off a couple more of these questions.
While Owen's getting set up there, additionally what he covered is the component API documentation, which is pretty new, which has all those different properties for the components that you can go ahead and call in your JavaScript if need be. One of the questions towards the top here, we're just kind of going through those, so bear with us, was about making a flexible creative in GWD which would adjust according to the screen size of mobile. Using the percentage-based positioning and sizing, you can now make a flexible and responsive ad.
And so what that is in the properties panel, there's a little pull down next to each position field where you can set a specific pixel value, or you can set a percentage base. And that's just getting, that's drawing out more of the functionality of CSS, where you have the ability to do percent sizing. They're building in, so the Google Web Designer is working really hard to push out very frequent updates. And they come out every few months, and they're just, there's cool new features coming out all the time. One of the upcoming features is built in support for media queries. And there's a number of questions about text. So why is text, how come it's sometimes unintuitive? Well, the text tool is just giving you a way to set a style on a div. So when you think about what's going on, how HTML works, and it assigns text as a style via CSS, which is cascading style sheets. And that's a set of rules and regulations for how, as you get deeper into the tree of a DOM, of document object, some of the styles kind of fall down through, and the scope of different rules kind of, you can override, and it just gets a little hairy when if you don't set things properly, or you don't know what's being set. So Google Web Designer follows this. Whenever you select an element and you start writing text into it, it's following these rules that you might not be aware of. So what I suggest doing is starting simple and then learning how, if I have a style on the body, and that's setting a font or a font size, and just understanding that when I make a child, that's going to take whatever the parent had, and so on, and it's doing its best guess. And then finally, you can always adjust the CSS directly of whatever element you're trying to edit.
And there's a question in there about font management and external fonts or custom fonts. The team is always working on font functionality and adding more features to it. I know that's one of the top priorities for them. Right now, we have font management in the design view for the Google Web Fonts, but you can always load the other font libraries into the JavaScript.
Yeah, just in the same way we were showing all the styles at the top of the page, all the JavaScript files down lower, you can include all of your own styles, your own fonts included. What is built in, which is really cool that we didn't really talk about, is the ability to add Google Fonts directly within design mode. You can kind of go shopping for the fonts that you like, try out, load a bunch of them on the page, and then just try out different look and feels, as a designer, and then go back in, maybe delete some of the ones that you don't need for that specific execution. But what it's giving you is this rich canvas on which to paint on, and you can kind of design in a visual way, but you're that much closer to the final user experience, because what you're seeing is actually HTML. It's not, you're not in Photoshop, and you're not auto-exporting a bunch of machine-generated code. It's giving meaningful names to everything that you're creating.
And I know we have a lot of questions in there, and we're not going to get to all of them, but just to let you guys know, just like the previous Hangouts on Air, I think within a week, we published all the answers to all the questions on there. So keep these questions coming here in the last couple minutes, because we are writing them down and we do answer them.
One quick question is for DFP and uploading. So the DoubleClick team, when you're making a standard creative, you can add an exit using a tap area component, using a Google Ad exit event, and that will get recognized by the parser when you're uploading this creative. So if you publish locally to a local zip, and that zip file has an element with an exit, that's what's going to get looked at, found. So in that way, you don't have to manually create a var click tag equal to a URL and then manually assign that to open a new window, window.open. So hopefully that kind of helps understand why can't I upload in DFP and that stuff.
GWD support for sprite sheets and sprite sheet animations. Not currently. I don't believe that's roadmapped. go onto the GWD forum, and if this is important for you, make sure to file it there. I know the team definitely does look at the forum and is constantly checking for feature requests there. So if that's important to you, definitely use the forum as an outlet for that.
The forum is a healthy place to get real-time discussions. Like all of the engineers and the people on the Google Web Designer team directly are answering, responding, to incorporating the feedback that's seen there into their decision making. And so in closing, we have the survey. So please fill out the survey. We love doing these kinds of things where we're trying to teach you guys and demystify some of the behind-the-scenes processes that happen. And please give us feedback, because we're going to take that to heart and build in new kind of tools, features, functionality that will help you guys on your journey toward creating beautiful, engaging content. So thanks a lot, and we'll see you guys next time.
See you guys next time.